Well, Harry, I have prided myself on owning pretty much, I believe I have every book that you've ever written on my shelves. I with Miracle Math, just random books I have, but I love.
Boy, yeah, Miracle Math. That was a goodie.
But it's interesting because I was reading Before I Forget, which I highly recommend for anybody to purchase this. If you're a fan of Harry's, you got to get this book. It's fascinating, all about his life and the wonderful stories of what he's experienced, both in the magic realm and outside of that. But I read here that you wrote a self-help book called Secrets of Memory, or no, excuse me, what is it called?
Secrets of Mind Power.
Secrets of Mind Power. That's it. Here it goes. Secrets of Mind Power. Now, that's a book that I wasn't even aware of. Can you talk a little bit about who's Fred Fell? This is from 1959, so this is kind of going way back. Tell us about what is this book, because I was able to pull up the contents of this. Yeah, you probably don't remember, or maybe you do. That's stupid of me to say you wouldn't.
Well, I remember basically, and I know how it started. I know how it came about. You know that my first book was How to Develop a Superpower Memory. That came out in 1956. Now, let me kind of, if I haven't told you these things before, if I did, stop me, obviously. Okay. I keep telling you that somebody once wrote that it's hard to start Harry Lorayne, but it's much harder to stop them. So if I'm talking too much, stop me. What happened, Renee and I were doing the Memory Act, which we did for 20 years. Toward the end of those 20 years, I had written, it was 10 chapters that I had done on a regular typewriter. We made pictures. I don't know how we did it. I put it in an envelope, and I called it the Memory Aid Course. And after the show, I would mention it before I said goodnight to the audience. And then I would sell it for $10. It got to the point where sometimes I made more money selling the Memory Aid Course envelopes than I paid for, my appearance. Anyway, one day, a guy comes over to me and he says, Mr. Lorayne, can you teach what you did on stage tonight? And I said, well, sure. As a matter of fact, I teach it in this course I'm selling. He said, can you give me a couple of chapters? And I said, here, take the whole thing. And I was selling it for $10. I give him one anyway. End of story. He was a literary agent. And again, to make the story short, he reads the thing. He gets all excited. At least he told me that afterwards. And he makes an appointment with me. And you said before, who's Frederick Fell? Frederick Fell was incorporated, was a pretty important publishing outfit at that time. I'm going back, quite a few decades here. He was located on Park Avenue in New York City. His office was. He gets me an appointment with Frederick Fell. Long story short, he wants to publish the book. He makes up the title, How to Develop a Superpower Memory. He did a couple of things that bothered me a little. Like on the cover of the book when it came out, it said, "The man with the most phenomenal memory in the world." And the reason I mention it, I remember doing a television show after the book came out, plugging the book, and the host, who was a bit of a wise guy, I remember that, starts to say, oh, and on the cover of the book, and I could see by the look in his eyes and the grit of his teeth that this was not going to be good. And I interrupted, thank God, again, I'm knocking wood mentally. I think in those years, I don't know about now, I was able to see these things. He was going to put me down for on the cover, the man with the most phenomenal memory in the world. So when he started, and he said, on the cover of this book, Mr. Lorayne, it says the man. I said, please, I didn't write that. I'm not the publisher. The publisher said that, not me. And that stopped him from, the baloney. Because the truth is, I would never say a thing like that. It's like with my DVDs. I have a 4-volume DVD set. All the best ever DVD set. And whenever I mention it in print, I put quotes around it. You know why? I've said this many times, I know I'm stupid, but I ain't that stupid. I'm not going to call one of my own things the best ever. Give me a break. I mean, that's stupid. How can you do? The publisher, the guy, and I told him, I told Louis Falanga, may he rest in peace. He was L&L Publishing.
Yes.
He gave it the title. I said, Louis, don't do that. People are going to yell about my ego. Well, he said, I don't care. They are the best ever DVD. That's what he wanted to title it. That's why I always put it in quotes. So I'm very careful about these things. Anyway, Frederick Fell publishes the book. He gives me a $500 advance, which I was very worried. I thought at that time, got to remember, it's 1956. I'm a young guy. I thought that if the book didn't work and if it didn't earn that money, then I'd have to give it back. I mean, I didn't know. I had no idea. Anyway, the book starts to sell. Rudy, it sold millions of copies. Millions. There were big full-page ads all over the world in different languages. Of course, it was selling for $2.95 at that time.
What?
And you ready for this? I was getting a penny a book.
Oh,
a penny a book.
Oh my.
That shows you how I was going to say naive, read stupid. A penny a book. When it started to sell, Renee, my wife said, Harry, get a lawyer. What? Okay. You know what happened? Again, long story short, they doubled it. I started to get 2 pennies.
Oh my gosh, Harry.
Right. It sold 11 million copies.
Oh my gosh. So what's 11
and I know of
11 million cents times 2? How much money is that?
I don't know. It's quite a bit of money. But you know, and it was in different languages, 11 languages that that I know of. Anyway, we're having lunch, and again he says to me, "You got to do another book." Well, obviously he's making so much money and giving me 2 pennies a book at this point. He wants another book from me. Of course, I guess my name value became pretty good, I guess. So I said, "But Fred, I have nothing more to say." He picks up a napkin and he says, "I'm going to give you some titles." And he starts to write titles on the napkin like, like I say, I can't read. I haven't looked at the book in decades. Titles like how to get rid of bad habits, how to develop good habits, things like that. How to utilize your thoughts in this situation. And he gives me a list of, I don't know, 10 or 12 things that I didn't know at all. Again, long story short, I start to research these things. And I start to write my own thoughts on the subject, like how to get rid of bad habits. So I made that the title of the chapter. And I started to teach or write what I personally had looked up and with my own ideas. That eventually became the Secrets of Mind Power. That only had one section on memory. All the rest was this that I'm telling you about. How to develop good habits, how to get rid of bad habits, things like that. And, over the years, I've got a lot of raves about that also. So, like I keep saying, I'm knocking wood mentally. I did okay. The book sold a heck of a lot. And for all, Fred Fell died a lot of years ago. And there's a company somewhere in Florida using the name Fred Fell Incorporated. And they don't sell many anymore because my new books have kind of taken over. So anybody who wants to really learn memory is going to buy the newer books, which is pretty obvious, I guess. But they're still selling a few. I still get a few bucks from the books. So every 6 months or so. Very little, but they're still selling. People are interested in the old stuff, I guess.
Well, there's folks like Anthony Robbins who read that book. Bob Dylan had a copy of that book, so it made the rounds. It fell into
I was told Bob Dylan had a copy of it on his night table. Yeah. So I don't know whether he used it to learn things or to put him to sleep. I don't know. But I remember Penn and Teller mentioning that to me, that he did that. So that's very nice.
But you have a lot of wisdom, I take it, in this book. Now, I wonder how much, like a chapter here, you have how to conquer fear and overcome inevitable troubles. What are your thoughts now as a 95-year-old man? How would you advise someone like me? When you say how to conquer fear and overcome inevitable troubles, well, tell me how does one go about conquering
I don't
fear?
know. I don't know. I wish I could read my own book because like I told you, I got Fred Phil made all these chapter headings. I looked them up. There was a book, again, I can't think of the title. There was a book that talked about all these things. And I realized then that I couldn't just take these ideas from somebody else's book and
Mm,
put them in a book of mine. I'd get sued or
mhm.
whatever, What I did was I read it all and I made, like I say, that was the title of the chapter. And I came up with my own ideas that worked for me at the time. Right now, I couldn't tell you what I wrote in that book now, Secrets of Mind Power for that. But I was pretty good when I read these titles, and I would say to myself when I was reading, I would say, no, the book on the subject, and I would say, no, I wouldn't do it that way. What I would do, like if I was afraid of doing something, I'd put my head down, damn it, and run into it and do it.
Mm,
That's it. That's how I get over that fear. And if I failed, okay, at least I tried.
mm.
And if I didn't fail, hey, I don't have to fear this anymore. I just didn't. So I don't have to think about it anymore. Those are the kind of thoughts that would come to me. I guess I'm trying to go back all those decades that I would write about.
Mm.
So I know that I was the kind of person, if I feared something, really, if it bothered me, what bothered me most was the fact that it bothered me. I had to get over that bother.
Mm.
So the only way to get over it is do it.
Well, it seems to me just reading through some of the book that, well, because I'm looking at it online. If anybody wants, you can look at books.google.com, and you can see a few of the chapters, not all of them, but are there available to the public to see. But it seems to me that you really have lived by the principles that you were teaching. There's one chapter called "You Can Find Time for Everything," and there's a quote here. There's an old saying that tells us, if you want something done quickly, give it to a man who is too busy to do it. He'll
Of
find
course,
time for it. That's really
of
true.
course.
I think that you were a very, 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 very busy guy, and yet you found the time to write Apocalypse magazine and
Right.
be a dad and a husband and all of those things. And it's amazing because you were probably the busiest person that I've had the pleasure of knowing, but it's just incredibly busy. And yet you
Yeah.
found time to do stuff. So I think you lived by the principles that you taught in your book.
Get it done. One of the things one of the things, I don't know if I wrote it in that book, and it may have been in the one chapter in that book on memory. One of the problems people had, I called it, it's a cliche, do it now. That was one of the big problems, big memory problems. And I know that from interviewing people, which I did quite often when I was writing a book. Too many people, mostly executives, busy people,
Mm.
because you just mentioned when you're busy, get it done, do it now. I would say do it now. You know why? Here's the executive. He's got a paper his secretary handed to him. Oh, this is important. Okay, drops it on the desk. I'll take care of it. Let me get this done. Yeah, and he drops another paper on top of that first paper. And the whole point is he doesn't get to see that first damn paper that he wanted to take care of. Doesn't see it till a week later.
Mm.
When he picks up this and oh my God, I forgot all about that. That's what I meant when I said do it now. You
Mm.
want to save time? You want to aid your memory? You got this, and don't say I'll do it tomorrow. Do it now. Then it's off your mind. It's done. So that's one of the things people again would rave up. They say, Harry, you saved my life. I got letters. People said you saved my life. You saved my job. God, I'm sorry I lost that carton of mail I told you about
Mhm.
before.
Mm.
People saying those flattering things. Uh, because I used to use myself as an example. I never said to myself, oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
Mm.
Not because I was so damn smart or whatever. I can't even think of the words because I didn't want to think about it. It was a pain in my backside. Get it done.
Wow.
Therefore, I never forgot it because I got it done.
That's good advice.
And I realized that as time went by and I started to think about memory and memory training, I said, that helped my memory a lot. I did it now.
Mm.
Therefore, there's no way I could forget it.
in one of the chapters of Secrets of Mind Power, it's you must trust others if you want to succeed. That was said years ago when you were a young man. You've lived a lot of life and you've been burned by a lot of people. You trusting
Yeah.
people has gotten you screwed over in some cases. What do you think now about, you must trust others if you want to succeed. How true is that now as a 95-year-old man, soon to be 95, looking back on, like, would you still advise people?
I would still advise it, and I don't recall. I would still advise it. I don't recall if I said this in the book. And I'd say, yeah, you got to trust others because you never know when you're going to get an idea from somebody else that might change your life. That might be very important. Now, it could end up the guy's a thief. It could end up he's a pickpocket. It could end up he's a murderer. Well, you'll find that out and then get the heck away from him. But at least take the chance that you're going to learn something. That was my whole point. Because I learned so much from other people, so I felt it was important to tell. You got to remember that when I wrote Secrets of Mind Power, I researched all the things I told you. Fred Fell gave you all these titles, but I took a lot of things from my life that I knew that I had done. And I trusted a lot of people. And yeah, like you said, I was screwed a lot of times. But a lot of times I learned something that was very important in my life. So if you don't take the chance of trusting people, you're never going to get that one shot of learning something that's going to be very important and good in your life.
In part of the chapter of that, part of this particular chapter, you talk about faith in God, interestingly, because you talk about, what is it that you say here? You say, some people accept the proposition that faith in God is almost a necessity for a happy life. But don't you think that perhaps God might prefer you to take care of some of your own problems? I don't think that he wants you to go through life depending on him always and doing nothing to help yourself. Can you talk a little bit about?
Well, that's again, I'm interested. I swear to you, Rudy, I had forgotten all these things I talked about.
Wow.
But you know something? I'm right. I don't want you to depend on God. For God's sakes, you got to help yourself. Give God a break. Leave him alone a little bit. He's got other things to take care of. You've got to take care of yourself. I know that was my point. Because if you're going to say, okay, I'm going to wait for God to help me, it's not going to get done. God is not going to take the time to help you specifically, So you've got to help yourself. That was the whole point.
Yeah.
Of that chapter. I remember that. Sure. Yeah. You want to say, thank you, God. Thank you. Look, I thank God almost every day for giving me the things he gave me. He gave me an ability to write. He gave me an ability to teach. He gave me an ability to entertain. But I still had to put my own efforts in it. One of the biggest fears I ever had after I went through the 12-year-old, all that help that I told you before about doing the billiard ball trick with ping pong balls, where I got a little accustomed to facing an audience. The first time that I faced an audience with my memory stuff, that was very difficult for me. It scared the heck out of me. But as I wrote, you're scared? Do it. Then if it doesn't work, it was technical, then you never do it again. What choice is there really? If you don't do it, my example is a very good one. I was scared out of my mind. If I didn't do it, I wouldn't have had the career I had, right? If I didn't get up and get on stage and memorize a lot of stuff because I was afraid I was going to bore the heck out of people. That was my fear, really. I've written this. I've said to people, and I've written about it, what could be more boring than watching somebody on stage remember things for an hour? Give me a break. What could be more boring than that?